While we may not like to admit it, the lust for gold has helped shape this country of ours. In fact, the very bedrock of our social structure is built upon a lapidarian mass of greed, envy, and social vulgarity. Although steel and wooden bits helped build this railway, it is in fact built on something far less solid. It's built on money. When gold was discovered by smelly, hairy Anglo-Saxons in the 1860s, it began a roller coaster of greedy shenanigans that continues to this very day.
Gold. Gold filling men's veins with the fever of riches. The news acting like magic and spreading through the land like fire. Gold from the keep it dark. Gold from the rise and shine. The arrow, the buller.
Many of the initial transactions between Maori and Pākehā involved a form of barter that seems inconceivable by today's standards. Pākehā wanted land, and Maori wanted the new technologies of the empire, as illustrated by the deed for the piece of land that is now known as Wellington.
100 muskets, 2 terces of tobacco, 40 iron pots, 20 kegs of gunpowder, 1 dozen umbrellas, 20 pocket handkerchiefs, 1 gross of Jew's harps, 10 dozen looking glasses, 14
But
pigs.
times have changed, and you'd be hard-pressed to trick a modern Maori with such Machiavellian mercantile madness.
27,995?
27,905. That'd be your lowest.
Yeah, definitely.
What about 12 muskets, 10 blankets, 40 tomahawks, a Reltafoot spar and a juice harp?
In the past, wealth has been generated by flogging off our natural resources, by farming the land, by building cities. But more recently, another activity has come to the fore: the buying and selling of trinkets. Among those to make a fortune from flogging shiny objects is the great cut-price jewellery entrepreneur, Michael Hill, jeweller.
Hello, Michael Hill. You're emptying a war zone here, all you chaps here, the Michael Hill Army, Revolutionary Army, this is it.
But he wasn't fighting for freedom. He was fighting for the free market. And by the 1990s, he had some 40 outlets in his jihad of jewellery.
Michael Hill the jeweller is really Michael Hill the general.
All right, now you're all issued with these balloons here because there's actually gonorrhea in the enemy camps and we want the Michael Hill team to be prepared. Oh!
But not all of his pranks are so light-hearted. Take this recent staff training session in Christchurch.
I'm going to take one of those watches home on Wednesday night. I'm going to take one home with the instruction manual, and I'm going to take it home as many nights as I need to, and I'm going to be able to learn that.
But then, here's a way to grab their attention.
Study of that. What?
All right.
Get out! Get out! Get down! Get out! Get out! Your head down!
Head down!
You're looking at me! Right there!
Hill may have built an empire by scaring the bejesus out of his shop managers, but his more recent foray into footwear was somewhat of a failure.
I remember that, actually. That was about 4 years ago. Michael Hill had a dabble at shoes. Didn't work. Then we see somebody else starts up. This, what is it, Shoe Warehouse. They're doing God's work. I mean, I'm wearing a very elegant pair of shoes here. Put the camera on them. Look at that. Beautiful leather.
They are a good-looking shoe.
You know what that cost me? $15 New Zealand in Argentina when the currency collapsed. $15. What would it cost me here? $500. They're bringing the world markets to us. Well, they're doing God's work.
Yeah.
Gold. Gold. Silver. Silver. Chain. Chain. Sail. Sail. Gold. Gold. Silver. Silver. Chain. Chain. Sail. Sail. Michael Hill, jeweller. How was that?
While any self-respecting businessman is sure to practice tax avoidance and sexual harassment, such things usually take place behind the closed doors of the boardroom. However, the pursuit of money has led others to break the law more openly. Looking like a stew, but a not-so-nice one, Freddie Angel's infamy lasted over a decade, with a seemingly unstoppable urge to smuggle live wildlife alive.
Convicted wildlife smuggler Freddie Angel has been sentenced to more than 3 years in jail.
Freddie Angel has been sentenced to another 6 months in jail.
If it crawled, chirped, wriggled or just poked its tongue out a bit...
All right.
Yep, here we go.
Freddie Angel simply couldn't resist the temptation to stuff them in boxes and fly them somewhere, like some crazed animal liberationist determined to give our wildlife the OE that they had, so far, been cruelly denied.
How many birds do you reckon you smuggled out of Australia?
From Australia to Bangkok was about 3,500 birds all told.
Most of us didn't give a shit about the Aussie animals he ferreted through customs, but when it came to our precious currency, things were very different. And yet Freddie Angel had no recognition that his unorthodox ornithology could even be a little bit against the law.
I'm a bird smuggler. I'm not a bloody criminal. Ship them out on Saturday morning for us. No?
Freddie loved the limelight.
You can sell bullshit if you wanted to. Just got to find a buyer.
He impressed all of us at the time by being one of the first criminals to habitually use a cell phone, even taunting customs via that very device while cameras were rolling.
Whereabouts are you? Mossman. We know where to get you. You're going away? No worries. We'll be in touch. Righto. Bye-bye. Yeah. Got a reminder, Kevin? Cheeky devil.
I've carried birds for 36 hours on a plane, and they all lived on the other side.
To his credit, unlike drug, carrot or marmite smugglers of his time, he saved our sacred fauna the ultimate long haul indignity. Freddie chose instead to stash his parrots in his socks and undies and stuff.
In your socks like this.
Sadly, Freddie Angel made the news only one more time, when he met his own confined box as a state highway statistic. Rock stars and drugs, whoop-de-doo. But what about the Salvation Army and a few kilos of Charlie? Revelations wasn't any use at all in warning of the shock that was to befall the Salvation Army band leader, Robert Stewart. It is one of those stories with enough bizarre elements to have made a best-selling novel. Robert Stewart, a previously upright Gisborne builder, conductor of the local Salvation Army band, family man, had wound up in big, big trouble. He was a desperate man, owing thousands to a Nigerian pyramid scheme that still hasn't begun construction. But at a Peruvian airport, he was found with his bag stuffed to the gunnels with snort.
Did you try to smuggle cocaine out of Peru?
No. Otherwise I'd have had none of it.
He maintains he was a bag-switch blind patsy courier. But nonetheless, horrors were to befall this sad Sally.
And they chained me to a spare wheel of a Toyota.
Paying his way out of this midnight express station, he made it back to New Zealand, where he is apparently happily checking the tuning on his euphonium. Like the gold rush of the 1860s, New Zealand in the 1980s was a godless, money-hungry cesspit. It all began with a kiwi fruit boom that brought in millions of dollars for these zespri ni Chinese gooseberries.
The growers' champagne breakfast that celebrates the start of the kiwi fruit harvest in May is already an institution in the Bay of Plenty.
It was a decade of decadence and degustations. To some, it was a never-ending orgy of drinking
Champagne's ordered for 50.
and spectacular spending.
Money, 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 and lots of it.
A Babylon of bad tastes and bad driving.
It was without question a completely hedonistic time. I loved it. I had such a good time. The parties were great. Moet was selling at about $20 a bottle. Everybody had it. The parties were huge. They were unbelievable. It's like what Rome must have been before the fall.
Unlike Rome before the fall, the parties were sometimes held on trains. It was a cascade of champagne, a tour de force of fornication and free market frivolity. And while the peasants may do with what is spaghetti and spumante, the fat cats partied like it was 1999.
It was the most exhilarating, exciting time. We were driven by our egos, but not by our pockets. There's nothing wrong with being driven by your pocket, mind you, but we simply weren't. I mean, I found myself worth $700 million, and I had no bloody idea until we actually one day totted it up. Chris Lewis, the tennis player, was with me, and he said to me, "You must be worth a bit." It wasn't hard to add up. That's a lot of money. And I remember going over to my wife, we were at my place in Terry, and I said, Anne, I'm worth $700 million. "Oh, that's nice," she said. "Tell Chris I'm serving lunch in 10 minutes. Truly, that's what she said.
Such was the wealth in the 80s that even the spastics and cripples were better off. But their wealth didn't derive from Rogernomics. It came from another 80s phenomenon. Tell the people what that phenomenon was, Gerard.
Now it's on.
Well done.
Telethon struck the country like a virulent dose of Hep C, and everyone succumbed to the intoxicating fever.
For 24 hours, the country was mad. And children were allowed to stay, invalids were allowed to stay up all night. Hospitals completely changed all their routine so everybody could watch the telethon.
Marty, over to you.
Right, we have from North Shore, Junior Black Power, ladies and gentlemen, Glenfield, $20.
Some more hooligans there, yeah.
Some more hooligans, yeah. $20 they've raised, thanks, guys, and challenge all headhunters, Ponsonby.
Are you enjoying this? Very much indeed. I must be very peculiar.
It was a heady mix of whistling tummies, celebrities, and amateur theatrics, with third world production values that defined a generation.
And Warkworth, have you got anything else there?
And now for something a little bit risque on telethon. While you're getting it all on, as far as donation's concerned, up in K Road, they're getting it all off. Let's get up to K Road.
Frank Happy Road in Auckland is known for strip clubs and places like that, but they're also pulling their weight this year. With me is Rainton Hasty. Rainton, you're doing something a little bit unusual this year. You've got a peepathon. What's a peepathon?
A peepathon, that's a good one. Yeah, well, we've got the peep show here and the 50 cent from 1 o'clock, 1 a.m.
Rainton Hasty's